The majority of primary schools is planned on Monday, the 4th of January. We know how vitally important it is for younger children to be in school for their education, well-being and wider development. In a small number of areas where the infection rates are highest, we will implement our existing contingency framework such that only vulnerable children and children of critical workers will attend face-to-face. We will publish this list of areas today on the gov.uk website. I'd like to emphasise that this is being used only as a last resort. This is not all Tier 4 areas, and that the overwhelming majority of primary schools will open as planned on Monday. The areas will also be reviewed regularly so schools can reopen at the very earliest moment. Ongoing testing for primary school staff will follow later in January, and we will be working to establish an ambitious testing programme helping to break chains of transmission and reducing the need for self-isolation where students and staff test negative for the virus. All pupils in exam years are to return during the week beginning the 11th of January, with all secondary school and college students returning full-time on the 18th of January. During the first week of term, on or after the 4th of January, secondary schools and colleges will prepare to test as many staff and students as possible and will only be open to vulnerable children and the children of key workers. The 1,500 military personnel committed to supporting schools and colleges will remain on task, providing virtual training and advice on establishing the testing process, with teams on standby to provide in-person support if required by schools. Testing will then begin the following week in earnest, with those who are in exam years at the head of the queue. This is in preparation for the full return of all pupils in all year groups on the 18th of January in most areas. To allow this focus on establishing testing throughout the first week of term, exam year groups will continue to have lessons remotely in line with what they would receive in class, and only vulnerable children and children of critical workers will have face-to-face teaching. As with primary schools, we'll be applying our existing contingency framework for education in areas of the country with very high rates of COVID infection or transmission of the virus. This will require secondary schools and colleges to offer face-to-face education to only exam years, vulnerable children and children of critical workers, with remote education being given to all of the students if they are in one of those contingency framework areas. We're also asking universities to reduce the number of students who return to campus at the start of January, prioritising students who require practical learning to gain their professional qualifications. All university students should be offered 2 rapid tests on return in order to reduce the chance of spread of COVID. To support remote education and online learning during this period, the government expects to deliver more than 50,000 devices to schools across the country on the 4th of January alone, and over 100,000 altogether during the first week of term. This is in addition to the 560,000 devices that have already been delivered, as we continue aiming for a target of over 1 million devices to be distributed for the children who need